What's up, YouTube? It's Flexing Joe, and I'm back with a Meta Calls trade review from Friday, January 26th. We traded some 0 DTE calls on Meta, and as you can see, they worked out exceptionally well. So I want to cover that trade with you all, and we're going to start by reviewing where the overall market was. So looking at NQ, I've been watching the overnight low, and we had this push up into pre-market high. Now, the push up into pre-market high was also, if you mark the high of Thursday down to this low, it was basically right at that 50% fib, which was a pretty crazy rejection right there. But on the move down, they couldn't sustain price lower. And what I was noticing over a period of time is that we were not able to close outside of this golden zone right here. So this is the golden zone between the 50% and the 61.8 fib on the overnight low to the pre-market high. So NQ was holding this as well. We also had wick down below the orb at 10 a.m. but then closed very sharply back above, and we were holding, the bulls are really holding this line in the sand. Even though they let sellers push them off sides, they held that line right there. If you look at ES, right, ES was telling a different story altogether. From its overnight lows, it cracked a pre-market high over the previous day's high, and then also you'll see the same thing here on that wick down of below the opening range, the first 30 minutes of trading. It also held that golden zone, and then right about here, right around 10:15, it had another wick down to that opening range low, that first 30-minute low of day right there. That's that orange dashed line, and it held that area as well and was bought sharply up, right? So ES was holding above VWAP the entire time with forming buyers wicks below it, which to me, I interpreted as a very bullish signal. Now let's go on to the Meta chart. So the Meta chart, right around the same time, it had this big bullish move here in pre-market. Obviously, you want to see price sustained, but if you look at where we were, right, we were within the middle of yesterday's range. We were over the 50% mark of yesterday's range, which I'll show you guys real quick. This low all the way up to this high. As you can see, we're well above that 50% range. And then here you can see at 10:05, we wicked down, and we were right at this 5-minute 200 EMA. And then also we put in this hammer here. So I saw that Meta wick down, right? And this is where the current all-time high was at this point in time from 2 days prior. So I saw Meta had wicked down, and it pushed back up and closed right at the 5-minute 200. The next candle took off from there, reclaimed the opening range low, and closed back above the 5-minute EMAs, which I interpreted to be a bullish signal. I waited for price to dip down, and at this point, I was watching the options contract chart. Now, from here, this is where I took entry, and I did buy the ask, getting in at 59 cents right here. This is my entry. The options contract made a low of day at 46 cents, and my max risk was going to be around 40 cents, just in case they wicked down below here, but I was going to risk no more than $20 a contract. So the important thing here is that you notice that this low is actually below the low of this candle right here, even though if I go back to the Meta chart, we actually were substantially higher. So that showed me that the theta was kicking in, and what I've seen is that when we see that sort of manipulation down and it's quickly bought back up, it shows me that there is a good chance that this trade is going to work, and that they've used this to try to wick people out, and now it's going to move in an upward direction, right? So I entered there, and then this is where I did something really crazy. Is I held, and I was holding for a high of day move. Now normally I would say, hey, you want to scale at pivot breaks, you want to scale at VWAP, you want to scale all that, but I didn't take my first scale until 162 right here. So I want to show you guys, I'm going to show you guys just a side-by-side look here of where this was on Meta at the time. So you'll see that this chart is pushing up, and I was interpreting this like all of this was very bullish, right? We had this rejection off VWAP. You see that I see the candles pull back down. They basically came all the way back down to my entry, and for a minute I was like, oh no, I'm going to cut this trade for a scratch or a small loss after being up like 20 bucks a con. But I was like, honestly, like I was risking 20. I wanted to squeeze more out of this trade. I thought we would go higher. So I let it run, right? The next one, because we came down and closed right on this 5-minute EMAs, and then the 10-minute chart, I want to show you that as well. You know, the 10-minute chart was still holding right through here. So I thought, okay, there's a good chance the 10-minute EMAs haven't flipped. So going back to that 5-minute chart, I saw that we start to push up the review up, and I said, okay, like, hey, we're bullish. We're going to continue to be bullish. And then we continue to move up, 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 up. And this is where I made a key mistake, and I was very lucky here. My intention was to scale on a high of day break, right? And to be honest, I would have been perfectly content to scale, you know, right about here as we pushed up to the high of day. So around this like 1.4 mark, right? This is easily over 100% trade. This is where I know I got like very lucky. I had thought that we would push higher and I would get more out of this. So I had an order at the time sitting at the 1.8 where I ended up getting filled right here, where I scaled all but 2 cons out. I had an order sitting right there. And the reason is that I was looking at, I was just a few different things, and I was just trying to determine roughly where we should see, you know, on this options contract chart. I looked at the first like 30 minutes, fib from high to low. Then I looked at this one here, which was like this is like the first like few minutes of the chart. It was like 1.78, and I just thought, okay, like I'm gonna put it at 180, and I thought it was gonna get hit on that push, not taking into account just how much theta decay was gonna hurt this, as it was such a slower move up. Even though this had moved up nearly $3 and was at this point approaching to be in the money, these contracts were not accumulating value as much as I had thought. So where I say I got lucky is that this hit 1.52 and it pulled back to 1.14. So I lost $38 a contract there, nearly $40 a contract on that move down, and instantly it got bought back up again. And I could see just reading this price action that there was a good chance that we were gonna, you know, because we had pulled down, and I was looking for this 5.9 to come up behind us and to give us kind of that lift, and that is exactly what happened. And then I moved that order down. I just moved it down like on the ladder, and that's why I ended up getting out at an oddball number of 1.62 there. And from there, I had that order at 1.8, so I just reinstated that. I scaled half my contracts out here. I scaled all but 2 contracts out there. So at that point, I was like, okay, like that's it. And in reality, like looking at this, and I'm going to go down to the 1 minute chart here for you all. Looking at this on this high of day approach, right? You see this right here. This is the exact candle where I was like, okay, well, we're approaching the current all-time high here. We might get the all-time high break, and if we do, we might get a little shove over it. So let me just preemptively scale, right? Because I was very aggressive at holding. Now let me not be stupid, right? Because I've obviously got a phenomenal trade on my hands and took all but 2 cons off. I'm happy I did that. It pulled back again, right? This was a pullback from a 185 peak on the last 2 cons. This was basically $100-ish pullback on that. It pulls back, and I get up through here, and I wanted to scale at $2. I had a scale order sitting at $2. It wicked off my order, and I was like, okay, whatever. I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna move it down. So as I watched it, I waited. It pulled back on me. I was like, yuck, right? It pulled back, and then I moved my order back up, and then I thought, you know what? Hey, it's gonna hit off $2 again. It's probably not gonna go to $2 again, and I moved it a few cents down and got filled, and lo and behold, we hit $2 again and pushed up even higher than that. But we didn't push up much higher than that, and then from there, you could see that there was quite the spill off. I also want to just quickly, while this was happening, I want to highlight. And then. Let me just, before I forget, I had moved my runner stop up here for the final con, because I scaled one left up here at 197. I moved it to basically have $100. I had the order at 163, and with some slippage, I got filled at 158. $99 on the runner. So as Meta was approaching and then hit this peak for its all-time high right here before it pulled back, NQ did the same thing and pulled back, right? So then when NQ took off of this 5-minute 9 EMA tap and pushed higher, it didn't make a higher high, which was concerning. but Meta did push over all-time highs, and that's where, you know, I was trying to like scale that last contract out, right? It was right around this, is this candle here when it pushed, and I scaled, because we broke the all-time high, I scaled the second to last contract and moved my stop up on the final one. But then we had this doji in here, and of course this candle knifes down and takes me out of my runner, which is totally fine. And this is the previous day's high, so we even wicked down and closed below the previous day's high, failing to break over and base on it. And then, you know, at the same time, you see NQ made a much deeper pullback. If we look at ES, it did the same thing as well, and it had broken up over the previous day high, the week's high, and it made like just like by a tick. And I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. Because now I have it marked as the new all-time high, but this was the all-time high beforehand. So it really only went over by 1 point over this price level one, which was the previous all-time high and the earlier high of the week. And then it came down and rejected as well. So that's really why the exit was there and moving the stop up. And I think I did that part pretty well. I could probably work on my scaling. I held through a lot, and I am not gonna lie, you know, from here at a 1018 entry here, all the way up here, this was 50 minutes, and this was especially like to this point was a lot. You know, it felt like, you know, 40 minutes felt like a lot, especially on a 0 day. But when we did this, this is where this trade really started to feel serious, and I thought I was just gonna have to like instantly cut and be like, man, I threw away a lot. But that did push up there. So that's my mistake. That's the biggest mistake and the biggest takeaway for me on this trade, is that I was not watching this like closely enough. And I just want to put this on the 1 minute chart again. This is the Meta 1 minute chart. So like look at this exact time frame here when we broke over a new high of day. If you look at my cursor, it is the exact same area. So this is exactly where my first scale should have been, regardless of price, but I had set an order, like I said, up here, and I thought that we would hit it. And you know, if we had probably made a bigger or faster push, IV probably would have jacked it up and hit that, but I just didn't take into account 0 day theta, you know, this being a little bit later in the morning than I was anticipating. And you know, really my scale for half should have been right here, and it would have made this 10-minute period here feel a lot more comfortable. But sometimes, you know, you get lucky, and that's what you see in trade review. I'm making this is a note for me in my trade journal, and I will do better in the future. I appreciate you guys watching this trade review. Let me know what kind of questions or comments you guys have below. I know it was a crazy hold, but I want to hear what you guys think. Appreciate y'all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.